Hello everyone, Sam here, and we gotta talk about Zenith Rand, Planet Vigilante. These were stories that were written by Richard Tooker in 1936, and they consist of three stories from the pulp magazine Mystery Adventure magazine. This was put out by a pulp publisher named Black Dog Books. This collection, that is. I don't know much about them. I know they were fairly prominent in the 2000s, 2010s. I haven't heard much from them in the recent years, but yeah, they put out this collection of the Zenith Rand stories. And Richard Tooker, who was the author of these three tales, I don't know a whole lot about him other than he apparently did a fair amount of pulp writing in the 1920s and 30s. Not much significant so far as I know. There's not a lot about him on the usual pulp channels I follow. But Zenith Rand pops up fairly prominently in some pulp reviews. So this is probably his most famous creation, because this is the one that pops up the most when you type in Richard Tooker. In case the name Planet Vigilante didn't clue you in, Mr. Zenith Rand is kind of a Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon type, because Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon had appeared in Rogers appeared in 1929, and Flash Gordon, I think, appeared in the early 30s. And obviously, they were very popular at the time. But Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon were generally aimed more at kids and teenagers. And the big thing about Zenith was that he was aimed much more at adults, because there was a heavy emphasis on sexuality, as you will figure out as we discuss these stories. I was interested in Zenith Rand mostly because of the connection he had to another character, who is the Domino Lady. I keep mentioning my Suitors of the Domino Lady podcast, and Zenith Rand came from the same company, because they owned Saucy Romantic Adventures, which had most of the Domino Lady stories, but they also owned Mystery Adventure magazine, which is where Zenith appeared, and the Domino Lady actually appeared for one issue in her last story. The company, as I know them, was Fiction Magazines, Inc. In this particular publication, they list Zenith Rand as being owned by Pierre Publications, Inc. That might have been a different name, or maybe Fiction Magazine, Inc. Was just a subsidy of Pierre Publications. Whatever the reason, Zenith Rand was actually much more related to the Domino Lady than people thought, because he had that connection to her by the company. And even his stories have a very Domino Lady vibe to them, in the sense of a heavy degree of sensuality. So I was interested in Zenith for a while, so I wanted to see what his deal was and just read his stories. And I'm doing this for Rocket Summer. For those that don't know, I was doing Rocket Summer last month, as inspired by Michael K. Vaughan. But because I was going to Pulp Fest, some of the stories I finished reading, I wasn't able to do reviews before I left. So there's going to be a few Rocket Summer reviews coming out over the next few days, and you can expect those. So we'll start the makeup readings with Zenith Rand. So the basic idea of these 3 short stories is that it focuses on Zenith Rand, who is this spaceman for the Terran Star Patrol, and it takes place in the 50th century, which is the 4900s. Which is actually kind of interesting that it's set that far in the future. A lot of these space type heroes, you know, they were set several hundred years into the future, but Zenith Rand goes, oh no, this is thousands of years into the future, which is kind of an interesting idea of scale. Richard Tooker kind of implies, oh, it's gonna be a real long time before we're conquering the stars. So. But Zenith is a spaceman, which basically means he goes around different planets solving problems or rescuing people who are in trouble. And he also has a love interest by the name of Sandra Yates. And Sandra is a Valkyr, which is basically a female space pilot. And it's one of those things that Sandra is, because it's the future, they have, equal rights and equal stations of power and position for both men and women. And that comes, that's a major theme throughout these stories about the equality of men and women in this future. And both Zenith and Sandra, sometimes separately, sometimes together, go and explore these various worlds, and they always come into hostile conflict with the aliens. There seem to be no friendly aliens in these stories. It's always some nasty, disgusting alien who needs to be blasted away, or who the heroes need to get away from. So that's the essential premise of all 3 stories. Zenith or Sandra go to a world, the other one has to save them, and they have to escape in their spaceships. So it's a simplistic premise for all of the stories, but it's a 6-chapter pulp story. They're meant to be fairly easy to follow and simplistic. So the first story is Zenith Rand, Planet Vigilante. And this was published in the June 1936 issue of Mystery Adventure magazine. And the plot about this one is that Zenith is on this moon called Camia. And Camia orbits a planet called Orthos. And Camia is filled with goat women. And the goat women are trying to get Zenith on Camia. He's stuck in some outpost. He's all alone. And he gets rescued at the last minute. But it happens to be by his old flame, Sandra Yates, who they both split up acrimoniously due to some relationship woes. So there's a bit of a relationship tension there. But also, unfortunately, Sandra's ship is busted, so they have to work together to get to an outpost on Camia that's controlled by the Terran Empire before the goat women get him, or both of them. Because, as they explain, if the goat women get you, bad things happen. So what I really enjoyed about this first story is that I like the fact that there is that tension between Zenith and Sandra, because you can tell from the moment they meet in this story that, yeah, they have a history. They are kind of the last people they wanted to see. I think there's a moment where even Zenith's kind of thinks, maybe I should have let the goat women take me, because that would probably be easier than dealing with Sandra. Like, it's just pure relationship drama stuff. But it is kind of interesting how, as the scenario unfolds and they kind of realize, all right, we really need each other in order to get out of this, they do have to learn trust and reliance, and they kind of work back to getting each other respect for each other back based on the scenario they're stuck in. I also really like the concept of the design for the goat women, because the goat women are not like the satyr types where you think like the top is a woman and the bottom is a goat. No, they are like these disgusting hairy creatures with goat legs, with like man-like hands, and just balls of fluff, and they truly look like goats if goats had like sort of a humanoid element to them. This one's not a goat woman, this is a goat male that Zenith has to fight, but this is what the goat folks look like. Like just these huge, hairy, disgusting humanoids. So it's sort of a... it's a very interesting design, and the other thing about them is that they are very sex crazed. There's no other way to put it. They want the story makes it clear that they want Earthlings for certain things, and there's this big thing about how it's the women that run the goat women, because their culture, they've kicked down the men. The goat men are only used for breeding, and the goat women are just so crazed that they look for any sort of sensual thing to do with either goat men or any alien outsiders. So it's a very sleazy portrayal of a alien race, but it is definitely one I've not seen before, so that's cool. And I also kind of like how the climax is... I showed a little picture of it. It involves Zenith fighting a goat man for Sandra, while Sandra is stuck in this cage. And it's a climax that's simultaneously exciting but also sleazy, because the whole thing is Zenith has to fight the goat man, and whoever the winner is gets Sandra as a mate, with all the implications that implies. And it's so unapologetically sleazy, but it's that 1930s sleaze where it's heavy on the implication rather than the action and showing the action. So it doesn't go too far, but it does. Anybody who's over the age of 20 understands what's going on. So it's delightfully sleazy, but it's also pretty exciting. I would say my one main criticism with the first story is that it leans a little too much on luck, because how they get out of the situation, this situation where they're fighting goat people, it really maintains itself on luck. I won't say what happens, but an event happens that nobody could have foreseen, man or goat person alike. And it's kind of like, yeah, that was kind of cheap, because it doesn't make Zenith and Sandra escape based on their own wits. It's just luck that this thing happens. And sort of like, yeah, I feel like there could have been a more interesting way to get him out of this scenario. But that's my only real major criticism of that story. The second story is titled Revenge on SCYLLA. This was published in the August 1936 issue of Mystery Adventure magazine. And the plot about this one is that Sandra's ship crash lands on SCYLLA, which is this moon. All the planets in these stories are moons. That's kind of interesting. They're not planets, they're moons. Just a weird detail. But Sandra crash lands on SCYLLA, and it's this moon filled with what are described as bisexual serpent men, who look to ravish any earthling they get their hands on, but especially women. And Zenith goes to rescue Sandra, and he also has this other space pilot with him named Death Lampson. And they both go to do this rescue mission to save Sandra from the Serpent Men. I will say, I think the thing I most liked about this story was the design of the Serpent Men, because they really, I kind of think they look more like mosquito men. This is what the Serpent Men look like. Just these big bug eyes with these pointers and these flippers. Kind of look more like a mixture of mosquitoes and dolphins than snakes, but I really like the design anyway. Because they look truly alien. These truly look like something that if you saw and they were coming towards you, you'd be like, ugh, no. So I really like their design. I also kind of liked how the second half of the story deals more of a conflict between Zenith and Death Lampson rather than the aliens. The aliens still play a major factor, but the conflict kind of becomes more between Zenith and Death. And the whole thing about it is that Death Lampson has his own agenda for being on the planet. And I won't spoil what that agenda is, but it very much comes into conflict with Zenith. And it kind of makes an interesting statement about the state of the Terran Star Patrol in this far-off future where, even these respected spacemen have their own agendas, even though they're supposed to be fighting for this higher cause of the Terran Space Patrol. So that's kind of an interesting idea. I also like that Zenith and Sandra are actually married in this second story. It's a bit of a spoiler, but I really need to talk about it because I like it because it sort of shows an interesting element of the society because they're stated to be mates, not husband and wife, because in the future the mindset is that creates an uneven power dynamic. They're just called mates. So it's kind of an interesting portrayal of this future where gendered language is not as emphasized, and they just call each other, if you're married to someone, they're your mate. And I also kind of liked it because I like that we got to see the relationship upgrade happen rather quickly rather than dragging it out. Like, I really hate series where you see the main character and you see their love interest and you know they're going to get together, but the story the author and the story sort of artificially drag out the final, their official recognizance of their relationship. I've never really liked those will they, won't they stories. So I really like that Revenge on SCYLLA just jumps right to it and say, yeah, they're married now. Still space pilots, but they're married, and yeah, it was just kind of neat to see that relationship upgrade happen fairly quickly rather than being dragged out over several stories. In regards to criticisms of this story, I would say that I think the Serpent Men are the least interesting of the alien creatures in these three stories, because they're just kind of, oh, they're Serpent Men. They live in hives. They grab people. They inject viruses into people to knock them out, and it's just kind of like the two other aliens in these stories, I think, are much more memorable. They have a much more memorable presence in what their abilities are and what they do. The goat women are a bizarre sex cult, and the next aliens we talk about have like telepathic powers. So the Serpent Men, aside from their design, I don't think they're as interesting as these other two alien races. They're not bad. They work for what the story is, but I just didn't find them as interesting. The other problem is that Death Lamson, first, you can kind of spot what his motive is going to be fairly early. I mean, a guy named Death probably has somewhat of a sinister motive of some kind. You can pretty easily spot that early in this story. And they also make it such a big deal in the opening about how feared Death Lamson is among the cosmos, to the point of, it's kind of like, it'd be weirder if he didn't come into conflict with Zenith. Like, he has every single alarm bell of, like, yeah, this is someone you should not fully trust. This is someone you should not be alone on a dangerous planet with. So when his secret motive comes out, it's more like you just kind of want to go to Zenith. You really didn't see it coming. The guy named Death didn't have your best idea, your best welfare in mind. So that's a little bit of a weak element. And weak is kind of the word I use for this story. It's definitely the weakest of these three stories, because, like I said, it doesn't really have that interesting a tale. It's a general rescue mission. The only thing that's kind of interesting is the second half switch and that relationship element between Sandra and Zenith, but otherwise it's just not all that interesting, at least compared to the other two stories. It's still very much readable. I still enjoyed it, but compared to the other two, yeah, it doesn't feel as interesting. So the third and final story of this collection is Angels of OORN. And it's, on this one it says but I believe it's Angels of OORN. Yeah, it's OORN. The Angels of OORN. This was published in the October 1936 edition of Mystery Adventure Magazine. And this illustration was the cover that was used for that edition. Don't worry, there's no nudity on this. I know it might look like that on this camera, but no, there's technically no nudity, so I won't get in trouble for this. So the premise of this story is that Zenith goes to OORN, which again is a moon of this planet called Procyon. And OORN, he goes to OORN on a rescue mission to save a scientist named Alex Suitors in his expedition, because they went to OORN to explore it and figure out something about its environment. But when he gets there, he realizes the expedition who isn't dead are crazy, because there's Alex Suitors and also this Valkyr pilot named Sybil Stryker, and they have both fallen under the sway of the OORNites, who have the psychic powers to manipulate people. And not only does Zenith have to deal with the OORNites trying to get him under their power, he has to deal with Sybil, because Sybil Stryker has gone mad with lust for Zenith, and she's trying to take Zenith for her own, and she'll use any method possible in her maddened state. So, I think the thing I really like about this story is the OORN themselves, because the OORN, they're not really given much of an illustration in this story, because they're meant to be sort of protoplasmic beings who constantly shift, but they have these huge eyes, and if you look into their eyes, you will be driven into a lust-crazed madness. It's a very interesting alien design, and it's kind of fascinating seeing this idea of a alien that's going to drive you insane, and they're so alien that you can't even really figure out why they're doing it. They're not given a motive. It's just like, yeah, they drive people nuts with lust if they look into their eyes. So it really is kind of a creepy idea of that kind of alien, like something you would truly be unnerved if you came across. I also like that, kind of like the second story, the main antagonist really is not the aliens. The aliens are a huge factor, but it's really Sybil Stryker, who is kind of the antagonist, because she's in such a lust-crazed madness from the OORNites' powers that her lust for Zenith is pushing her to do all these terrible things. Like, there's times where she tries to trick Zenith to look into the OORNites' eyes, just so he'll get, discombobulated and hypnotized, and he'll start wanting Sybil instead of Sandra. So, and then there's even this point where Sybil actually, slight spoiler, but Sybil actually kidnaps Zenith, and she's like, "Oh, I'm taking you, Zenith, somewhere where no one can interrupt us." So it's like, it's kind of an interesting switch for the pulp era, because normally the pulp era would have like the damsel in distress that the hero has to save from the male villain, but in this one it's actually Zenith is the dude in distress from the maddened Sybil. So it's kind of an interesting flip on that trope that was common in pulp fiction. I also really like this story because the other two stories did certainly present Zenith as a hero, but kind of a basic space hero that Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon, you could see him doing. He wasn't really anything special, but I really like that this story really goes to proving how heroic he is, because there are points where he could take an easy way out. He could destroy Sybil. He could just destroy the crazed members of the expedition, but he doesn't. Even though they're crazy and they are a harmful risk to him, he does want to see them get mental evaluation, mental help from the Terran government, and he does try to save them earnestly. And I also like that he actually does fight the Oornites and their influence. He legitimately seems heroic in this one, where he's trying his best to do the right thing. And the last two stories, they did sort of have that, but they kind of felt more like it almost felt like Zenith was doing the right thing, mostly because there was really nothing else to do, and was at least somewhat self-interested. Here, he doesn't really do anything out of self-interest. There's a lot of things that he could do that was would be very beneficial to him and make things easy, but he sticks to the spaceman's code. So I kind of like that we saw this heroic element of him. I also think that Sandra gets a really good chance to shine in this story, because in the first story, Sandra did help Zenith, but then she was captured and put in a cage. And in the second story, she didn't really get much to do because she was kidnapped by serpent men. But in the third story, Sandra actually gets a real chance to shine, because there's a point where she gets into a dogfight with Sybil, who is also a Valkyr. So it shows the two of them going head to head and showing who's the better pilot and dogfighter. And she is actually the one that has the climactic fight with Sybil, not Zenith. So there's kind of this interesting thing of where Sybil is kind of the gets a lot of chances to show her heroism, and it's just very cool to see. You could really kind of see how Zenith and Sandra watch each other's back and will step up to help the others. So that's a really cool thing to see. And like I said, it's kind of an interesting role reversal where Sandra is actually the one who kind of has to step in to save the day. And Zenith is in the climax, he's essentially a damsel in distress, or a dude in distress, if you want to be nice about it. And it's kind of interesting that you see that sort of role reversal there in Pulp Fiction, which a lot of people sort of classify, it's always the woman who's fainting, and the man has to save her. In this case, no, it was actually the man was in distress, and Sandra had to save him. So it's kind of interesting seeing that sort of role reversal of the typical character tropes. And one thing I'll admit I kind of enjoy about this story is that this is by far the sleaziest of the three stories. Like that, the first story was fairly sleazy, what with the goat women sex cult thing. And the second story, it was a little sleazy. I won't spoil what, but Def Lampson wants to do sleazy things in that one. But this third one outmatches them, because you have aliens that drive you into lust-crazed madness, and you have a story where Sybil Stryker is basically throwing herself at Zenith, and at one point she gets him in a hold that's very suggestive, and it's kind of like and it just keeps getting more and more sleazy. The story goes on. Like, there's a scene where Sybil is squealing in delight as she watches Zenith and Suitors, who's the scientist. They get into a fight because at this point they've both gotten a little Oornite crazed, and they're fighting for Sybil. And Sybil is squealing in delight as they beat the brakes off each other while she waits for the winner, if you know what I mean. Like I said, that's the scene that's on this cover, and it's so immaculately sleazy that it's kind of like I'm more impressed that a 1930s pulp went there, and it's kind of that rare story where the high sleaziness kind of adds to it rather than detracts from it. Because I could see a version of this pulp story where it's just, oh, the hypnotized people can become violent, and that's the whole thing. Like, feel like a lot of other pulp magazines would have done it that way, but Richard Tooker and Mystery Adventure magazine say no, it's a lustful madness. So, and I think it actually makes the story more distinctive than it would have been had it just been, typical psychic powers make you go nuts and fight people. So yeah, this is one of those rare stories where the sleazy nature of it actually kind of makes it more interesting than it would have been otherwise. And it's also is a story. This is also the element that kind of emphasizes how important marriage is in the future, because in the future it's stated, if you get a mate, it's pretty much a mate for life. And it's treated as this very high ideal. You don't cheat on your spouse. And so, again, that kind of makes an interesting dilemma for Zenith, because, Sybil is a beautiful, beautiful woman, but he has to fight Sybil's machinations and OORN's influence because he wants to stay true to Sandra. So, again, it's a thing where, yeah, it's sleazy, but it does say something about Zenith's character, and I think that's very impressive when you're able to write a story that's unapologetically sleazy, but the sleaziness does actually play into the characters, and it does serve a narrative point as well as a point for the characters. So yeah, that third story is a lot of fun. I think it's where Richard Tooker really hits his stride with this series, and it's kind of a shame that it stopped there, because I kind of like, it would have been interesting to see where things would have gone from there. So the final ranking of Zenith Rand, Planet Vigilante. I rank on the 5-star system, 0 out of 5 being the worst, 5 out of 5 being the best. This one was pretty easy to rank. I would say a solid 4 out of 5 stars, which in my ranking verbiage is a good book. And yeah, this was just one where I think for the intent of the series of being in a more adult version of a Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon type space hero, the collection does what it aims to do. It tells a entertaining batch of stories about the Zenith Rand and Sandra and the weirdly sensual alien races they keep coming across. So, yeah, I actually enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I would. Like I said, I think the one major thing that lags is that second story with Death Lamson. I think that second story just kind of... It's not as interesting as the first one and the third one, and it goes... It's not... I wouldn't say it's a terrible or even a bad story, but it does, compared to the insanity of the first and third ones, kind of tempers it down a bit, and it's just not as interesting. But overall, I think this is a good adult theme take of that space hero embodied by Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon. And I also really like the alien designs. I think that carries a lot of these stories too, because you just see really cool alien designs with like the goat men and the serpent men and the Oornites. Just really cool stuff, and it's kind of like, oh yeah, these would be very cool aliens to see rendered in animation or more detailed illustrations. So, and in regards to recommendation, if you like space heroes and you want kind of one with a little more of an adult vibe, you'd probably like Zenith Rand. And if you're into like more sensual science fiction, again, you might like this. It's not very deep in terms of the science fiction. Like, there's not Isaac Asimov levels of description of the technology or anything like that. It's basic pulp science fiction of like, the spaceship is a spaceship. It goes fast. It shoots lasers. And that's where it's at. There's not much elaboration beyond that. So if you're looking for like hard sci-fi, this is not what you want. But if you're okay with sort of those more sensual, sort of pulp science fiction that's kind of more about the aesthetic than necessarily explaining the science, I think you would probably enjoy this. Any inspiration? For those that don't know, I'm a working writer, and whenever I do these reviews, I like to talk about whether these stories have inspired me in any way. And this one hasn't really inspired me in the sense of, like, I thought of a distinct story I wanted to do. This just really made me want to write a Zenith Rand story myself, because I didn't mention this in the beginning, but Zenith Rand, to my knowledge, is in the public domain, because Fiction Magazines Inc., just like with the Domino Lady, who's in the public domain, Fiction Magazines did not renew the copyright, so the Domino Lady became copyright. And yeah, even in this the copyright notice of this page, they say, yeah, the first 3 stories are indeed copyright free. They are in the public domain. So, yeah, I'm kind of this kind of makes me want to write a Zenith Rand story, partially due to his ties with the Domino Lady, but also because the format of his stories is really interesting. Well, not so much interesting, so much as easy to do. You just gotta crash land on an alien moon. You gotta run into a bunch of weird aliens, and somehow sex happens. Or I should say sexuality happens. No technical sex happens in these stories. So don't worry about that. But there is a lot of sensuality in these stories. So yeah, I might be interested in seeing if I could write a Zenith Rand story. That might be cool. So yeah, we'll see about that. So that is all I have to say about Zenith Rand Planet Vigilante. I'm glad I finally got around to him, because he has been on my backlog for a while, and I rather enjoyed these stories for what they were. And like I said, be aware if you do read them, they are much more sensual and much more adult themed than a lot of pulps from the time were, at least in presentation. So, you know, you probably don't want to hand this to a teenager or something who doesn't know much about pulp, because this was pretty much aimed more at adults, because I don't know if Mystery Adventure Magazine qualified as a spicy, but they were pretty close. So just be aware of that, that this is definitely meant more aimed at adults. Not necessarily explicit content, because there really isn't much in that sense, especially by today's standards. But definitely not something aimed at younger audience. So just keep that in mind if you get this. Don't give it to your nephew who's like 12. This is grown-up reading, even though in some ways it's more immature than what grown-ups should read. But like I said, I still enjoyed it, and yeah. So if you're into space heroes and want them with a little more spice, yeah, Zenith Rand might be the one for you. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys later. Bye.